your Bibles, 2 Samuel chapter 11. Remember, we just read the first 5 verses last week when we saw David committing, he didn't commit adultery, he really committed rape when he took Bathsheba and she's pregnant from that situation. And there's no way to soft sell what David did, even though he's one of the heroes of the faith. Here's a great man of God, but I'm glad that God actually exposes David and exposes sin in David's life. He not only likes to bless people who follow him and submit their lives to him, but even the best of us, any one of us could, if David could fall, we could fall. Does that make sense? If you know where David is, he's a prophet of God. He's written 100 Psalms, dancing with all of his might. He just got word from the Lord that God was going to give him a throne that would last forever. And he was, before God, just thanking God for the blessing. And man, why him? And so humble. And then he does that. It reminds me that Satan secretly prowls around this world looking for any one of us. All of us. It doesn't make any difference who you are. We are not out of his reach. You'd think that David, no way would David. I mean, I can think of some of the other ones, or the younger ones, the immature ones. Not David. But David does submit to sin, does he not? To the lusts of the flesh. It also reminds me that even though anyone can fall to sin, we read it all the time about the leaders falling in sin, priests molesting, pastors committing adultery, treasurers running off with the money. People in church are just like the people in the world. You almost see like, what's the difference? Why are these things happening? Why do we allow wickedness and evil to happen to us? It's not like he didn't have a choice. In fact, remember, David had all kinds of wives and concubines. Anyway, we all sin, and we don't have the right to judge sinner. That's not a responsibility. Sin is judged by the Holy Spirit, and Jesus Christ will judge the sinner if they don't repent. That's really important about this lesson, because it's about you and I too, remember. 3 things you do when you sin, and every one of us sin. You're either going to, 1, deny, no, that's not me, that's not my problem, I didn't do it. I didn't have it. And David could have easily done that. When Uriah comes home from battle and sees that his wife is 3 months pregnant, she could say, well, David took and raped me. And David could easily say, Uriah, you and I, we've been at battle together. We've been in the trenches together. You're one of my 30 guys, man. You're the top. You're the top of the line. And I made you captain of 1,000 men, Uriah. We go way back. I wouldn't touch your wife. As a matter of fact, I heard that she goes to the market often on Wednesdays, always on Wednesdays. And she's gone a long time. I'm thinking, who's he going to believe? The king of Israel or Bathsheba? I mean, he could lie about it, deny it had anything to do with it, or throw the blame on the innocent party. They do that a lot. Is that really? The second thing you could do is cover up the sin. And either cover it up or make light of it. So, for example, you can say, I don't gossip. However, I do tell the truth about a number of people from time to time. Kind of make light of it. Or, no, I don't steal. Well, what about taxes? Well, nobody pays all of their taxes. No, everybody hides a little income, right? There's stealing, and we start making kind of light of it, or making excuses for ourselves, or try to cover it up. We had a rule in our house: no playing baseball. You guys had that rule? That's dumb. I thought it was a dumb rule at the time until I found out why and broke the window in our front door. We had 3 little 12 by 12 windows in our front door, and I broke the bottom one. I thought, that's why he has that rule. So it just so happened my uncle, he's like 10 years older than I am, so my uncle came in, he was going to come visit for the weekend, and we were going to go out hunting. Sees the broken window, I'm like, oh, I gotta do something before my dad gets home. So he runs down, I paid for the glass, we cleaned up the mess, we put the fresh window in. Booyah, nobody, Dad didn't have to know the window broke, I covered it up. Then at dinner, my youngest sister squealed on me. Annette, if you're watching this, anyway, your sin will find you out. You know, you break the law of God, you break the law of my dad, it'll find you out, and there's going to be a consequence to all that. The third thing you can do when you sin, when you know that there's sin in your life, right, is admit it. You know, God already knows it. There's probably a couple around you, but you should know, right? You might as well admit your sin, confess that sin, beg for forgiveness, and be forgiven. Now, you might not be forgiven by Uriah, you know, you might not be forgiven by Uriah for what he did, but at least get forgiveness for God, and that's where, you know, you might, I mean, David should be stoned to death for what he did, but maybe begging Uriah forgiveness and stuff, whatever, okay? But that's the third thing, right? You just admit that you're a sinner and ask for forgiveness. Which one do you think David's going to do? Not number 3, I can tell you that. He's going to try to cover it up. My father-in-law used to say when we were talking about different things about this couple that got married, a young couple that got married. He said, you know, when people get married, you never really know when they're going to have their first child. It can come anytime. But after that, it's at least 9 months apart. 3,000 years ago during David's time, same deal. Uriah has been in the battle since chapter 10. We didn't read it, but since chapter 10, Israel's been at battle with the Ammonites and some others. And when they defeated the Ammonites and their allies who they teamed up with, they ran back to their central city, their capital of Rabbah, which is across the Jordan River, 60 miles away from Jerusalem, north and east. They gave pursuit, and that's where the army of Israel is now, 60 miles away. Uriah has been gone for probably 2 to 3 months. No way is this going to be Uriah's child. And so David's got to do something. He's got to come up with some kind of a plan. What could David do as the king? What could David do? And so he decides, I'm going to try to cover this up. And he devises a plan. I'll have Uriah come in from the battle. Man, he hasn't seen his trophy wife for like 3 months. He's going to want to have a nice home-cooked meal, a nice bath, and be with his wife for a day or two. You know, I'll give him a couple of days off. And then send him back to the battle, and no one will be the wiser. Now, that's a good plan. I mean, if you're David, I mean, that's a good plan. I'm not trying to say, go ahead and do that thing. I'm just saying that seems like a workable plan. One failure about that plan, by the way, if it would have worked, if she would have had that child, and Uriah would have thought it was her child, his child, Bathsheba's going to have to live with the lie that it isn't his child, and only her and David would know it's not his child, Uriah's child, the rest of her life. I would imagine that's going to make one of her eyes go blind too. I mean, it's going to be a horrible thing that she would have to live with all of her life. And David, did he really get away with it? If that would have happened. So anyway, anyone else would have done what David thought they would have done except for Uriah. And so we'll read verses 6 through 12. David sent to Joab, who's the captain of his army, commander, send me Uriah the Hittite. So Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked concerning the welfare of Joab and the people and the state of the war. Then David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. And Uriah went out of the king's house, and a present from the king was sent out after him. You know, nice bottle of champagne, take this to your wife and, you know, spend the night with her. Wash your feet. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all of the servants of the king and did not go down to his own house. Now when they told David, saying, Uriah did not go down to his house, David said to Uriah, have you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house? The logical thing they would have done, right? And Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in temporary shelters. And my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in an open field. Shall I then go to my house to eat and drink and to lie with my wife? By your life and the life of your soul, I will not do this thing. Then David said to Uriah, stay here today also, and tomorrow I will let you go. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem all of that day until the next. Now, before you jump, Uriah. What kind of a man is Uriah who wouldn't go in to see his wife when he's home on leave after 2 or 3 months? It wouldn't be anything illegal or immoral. It would be the logical thing, the natural thing to do, maybe even a loving thing to do for him to come see his wife, right? But do you notice Uriah? I mean, this man has a high sense of integrity, of morality, of loyalty, of respect. He doesn't want to come back. So it's about a 2-day journey, about 60 miles. Probably 2 days to get back to Jerusalem. Going to spend 2 days in Jerusalem, a couple days back. So he's gone for a week, right? And when he gets back after a week of R&R, all the guys, so what happened? What'd you do? You know, he doesn't want to say, oh man, it's so nice to be able to spend the night with my wife, and man, she made my favorite dish, and yada yada. When these guys have been in battle for the last 3 months, 4 months, he did. No, this is where my guys are. This is where the general is. These are where the priests of the Ark of God are. They're out in the open field all this time. I'm not going to go back and say, I had a great time, the time of my life when you guys were out here in an open field. Man, that's a leader of men. You know, that's a man with integrity. So what do you do with a guy that has so much integrity, such a high level of morality? Just add alcohol. That's what David tries anyway. So strike one, here comes strike two. In verse 13, David called Uriah, and he ate and he drank with the king, and David made him drunk. And in the evening he went out to lie on his bed with his Lord's servants, but he did not go down to his house. Hey, have you ever talked to anybody who did something really stupid, like the night before, whatever, and they say, what happened? Oh man, that wasn't me. No, I know that wasn't you. You would have never done that. You would have never said those things. What got into it? Well, it wasn't me. It was those guys who came after me. What guys? You know, Jim Beam, Johnny Walker, those guys are bad influence on me. And that's what that's the excuse. I got drunk and so my morality goes down. I did this or that, but I would have never done it otherwise. And that's like an excuse. Good excuse? Uriah didn't. Uriah was like, no, I feel pretty good. It's pretty warm in the heart, but you know what? The guys are still out in the field. You know, no, I'm here. Maybe I had a couple too many beers, but no, I'm still married to that wife. No, I'm still whatever. I'm responsible for this or whatever. That is not an excuse for any action. And it didn't work with Uriah. So now what should David do? He brings him home, sends a gift, he doesn't go home. He gets him a little hammered, a little tipsy, gets him in the right direction, he still won't go home. So how is David going to cover up the sin of raping Bathsheba and getting her pregnant? He's going to have to do something with Uriah. Could have asked him for forgiveness, right? That's still on the table, isn't it? But the consequence could be stoning. And what will the rest of the people think of me? David, the one who sang and danced with all my might, was even undignified before God. God promised me a throne forever. What's that going to do? What are people going to think of me when they see me? Yeah, I've done that. I wonder if David could could have maybe, I would have kept Uriah there. Sooner or later. Uriah, you know what, I want you to stay here. I want you to be one of my cabinet members. I want you to be my very special advisor. 9 to 5, weekends and holidays off, and you can go home every evening to your wife. Now that would have worked, wouldn't it? I mean, having him go back to battle, he could have just, except for remember the part about Bathsheba not having his child, it's still David's child. So he's got to design something else. He's going to have to get rid of Uriah. I mean, that's the only thing that's coming to David's mind. And so this is what David does, verse 14. The next morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he had written in the letter saying, place Uriah in the front line of the fiercest battle and withdraw from him so that he may be struck down and die. Any ambiguity in that order? Absolutely understand what David wants done. Could you imagine writing out that in your hand, the king's hand, putting it sealing it, then handing it to the guy, Uriah, and saying, go give this to Joab? This is your death sentence, Could you imagine? How low did David sink? What is his character? Isn't this like a man after God's own heart? When did that all change? Joab. Why would Joab do that? If you were the general in that army, would you do that to make sure that not just him, but a number of your men are going to die? Think about that. I'll get back to it. So it was, Joab kept watch on the city, that he put Uriah at the place where he knew there were valiant men, valiant Amorite warriors. And the men of the city went out and fought against Joab, and some of the people among David's servants fell, and Uriah the Hittite also fell, also died. So, just real quickly, all of Israel is camped around the city gates of Rabbah. And from time to time, they'd open the city gates, the city, and the armies of the Ammonites would come through, and they would be a battle, right? A battle. But as they lost, they would retreat back to the city. And there was a buffer zone. There was an umbrella of arrows. And you would never send a guy within that area. It was certain death. It was suicide to do that. And those archers could probably reach 100 yards or better from the top of the city wall. They could fling those arrows out quite a ways, and so giving your men a chance to come back, retreat, heal up their wounds, get something to eat, get a few more guys ready, sharpen whatever needs to be sharpened, replace whatever weapons need to be replaced. So you go back to battle in a few days, a week, or a couple weeks. And so that's what would take place from time to time. And so no general would ever give the command to go all the way through and follow those guys right to the gate and then have the rest of his army retreat. He had to give that command to Uriah. He had to tell him, Uriah, when those men start retreating, I don't want you to come back to safety of our camp. I want you to pursue them like a dog on a bird. I want you to keep going after them right to the city gate, Uriah. And Uriah, always the faithful, always the man looking up to his leadership, thought, okay, I'll take my men, and that's what we'll do. We'll follow them right to the city gates and then some. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to take the city. That's what it would have been. No general would have given that order. Not anyone with a heart anyway, or a mind. Joab sent and reported David all the events of the war, and he charged the messenger, saying, when you finish telling the events of the war to the king, and if it happens that the king's wrath rises, and he says to you, why did you go so near the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall? Why did you go so near the wall? Verse 21. And you shall say, your servant Uriah the Hittite is also dead. Verse 22. So the messenger departed and came and reported to David all that Joab had sent to tell him. And the messenger said to David, the men prevailed against us and came out against us in the field, but we pressed them as far as the entrance of the gate. Moreover, the archers shot at your servants from the wall, so some of the king's servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is also dead. So he never even waited for David to respond. He just put that in there right away. David responds, verse 25, he said to the messenger, thus you shall say to Joab, do not let this thing displease you, for the sword devours one as well as another. Make your battle against the city stronger and overthrow it, and so encourage it. Encourage Joab as best you can. Joab is the commander of the army of Israel, of David's army. When David wanted to take Jerusalem, he said, anyone who wants to lead the charge into Jerusalem, if you take Jerusalem and it falls, you'll be my commander for all times. And Joab led the charge and took Jerusalem, and it became the city of David. David is really stooping to Joab's character, his level. Remember what Joab did when he met Abner, son of Ner, the king of Saul's army. For 7 years, the army of Israel was fighting David and the army of Judah and Benjamin. And Judah was getting stronger and Israel less. And eventually Abner said to David, you know what, why don't we just bring us all together? I'm going to help bring all the other 10 tribes with you, and you are to be king over all of the land, all 12 tribes. Let me help you make this happen. And so there was peace between Israel and Judah then, and David was going to be king of all 12 tribes, as God told him. And so Abner left in peace, but Abner had killed Joab's brother, Abishai, during wartime. He told Abishai to leave, don't keep pursuing me, but Abishai ran after him, tried to get to Joab, or not Joab, but Abner, and Abner killed him. But Joab wanted revenge. Okay, but now it's peacetime, and Joab actually kills Abner in secret. He sneaks up and he takes him, he stabs him, and kills him during time. So he murdered Abner, son of Ner. So this David is and we're going to look at that in just another minute. But I just want to let you know about Abner. Abner was the right man to kill somebody if somebody wanted him dead. I mean, it doesn't seem like, yes, if the guy's innocent, and I mean, he must not be innocent in David's eyes if he wants him dead, even though he's been a great soldier, he's been a great commander. If David wants Uriah dead, okay. It would have taken a miracle for Uriah to survive that attack. You just don't survive that kind of attack. Thousands of arrows hitting you from archers just continually throwing those arrows at you. Plus, your own troops are retreating, and you're the only one there. You're totally exposed. So my question before God is this: God, why do you allow those kinds of plans to be fulfilled? Why didn't you have the miracle take place? Look at what you did for David time and time again because of his righteousness. You saved him from Goliath and from King Saul twice and from, whatever. Why would you allow Uriah to die? He was such a great man of God. For some unknown reason, to my little mortal mind anyway, God allows the wickedness of all kinds, their plans, to go according to plan. It just seems like David is going from dark to darker, from bad to worse. It's like he's a different man altogether. It's not really David, the merciful, the kind. He's the rapist, murderer, king, David. I see where God allowed those things constantly. He did not stop Cain from killing his brother Abel. He did not stop Jacob's 9 sons for selling Joseph into slavery. He does not stop Uriah. He did not stop Satan to attack Job. He did not stop his son from going to the cross for you and I. He did not stop the martyrs of the church in the book of Acts or in today's communities that still do that, imprison and even kill men and women of faith. God doesn't necessarily stop the plans of the wicked. And I guess in some way it's telling me or reminding me of the depravity of man. And it's not just people outside the church. We think it's a lesson in them, but this is David. How many churchgoers have sinned, and big time sinned? You know, again, priests and pastors and leaders of all kinds, presidents, governors, school superintendents, and, you know, it doesn't make any difference. They all seem to submit to sin. I had a second question. Why would Joab issue the order knowing he was going to have a good man killed? One of the most bravest of all of David's army, 30 of the top bravest men, why would he issue the command? It's not his job to see how many guys he can get killed in battle. You're not going to have the faith of your men if you're taking them and doing stupid things with them. They're not going to want to follow you or any of your orders eventually if you continue to have orders like this. And Joab was a good commander. He never lost a battle. I mean, God was with David. He's with his commanders. He's with Israel. And, you know, that's part of it also. But he seems to be the George Patton of Israel. He's a good leader. And he's there fighting at the front. Okay, that's Joab. So why would Joab do that? Remember I told you he killed Abner? Do you know what David said to Joab when he found out that Abner was dead at Joab's hand? He said, David said to Joab, he said, I and my kingdom are forever innocent before the Lord concerning the blood of Abner son of Ner. May his blood fall on your head and on your whole family, Joab. And may Joab's family never be without someone who has a running sore or leprosy. That's what he thought about Joab for killing an innocent man. And now David is worse than that, isn't he? I mean, at least Abner killed his brother. What has Uriah done? Nothing. I think David is lower than Joab by far. Joab doesn't think twice about killing Abner in peacetime. He doesn't think twice about killing or having Uriah dead. So why? What if Uriah dies? Do you know what Joab has? The only copy of the order that says David's own hand, here's his order, and that's why Uriah is dead. Could you imagine if he did something wrong and the king calls him in to chew him out and he goes, what'd you say, David? What if I let that slip? What if the priest found that out? What if this guy found it? You know, you remember David singing about David killing his 10,000s? David can do no wrong, David. Well, what if that orders? I mean, Joab, he's got whatever he wants from now on. I can see the incentive from Joab for wanting to do that. How about David's response when he finds out that it finally took place? Do you think, oh my gosh, what have I done? Do you know what he says? The sword devours one like it devours another. Que sera, sera. Tomorrow's another day. If they're fighting down in Australia, they would have said, hey, tell them no worries, mate. You know, no, that's what, it's like David doesn't have a heart. It's like he has no relationship, no conscience at all, no relationship with man or God. What happened to David? Another question. Is it possible David didn't know he was sinning? You won't know until next week, but I want you to think about that. Is it possible Joab didn't know he was sinning when he carried out that order? Joab's got blood on his hands for a second time that we know, innocent blood. Can you do something, can you sin and not know about it? Do you think? Got to swirling a little bit. His eyes just a moving. David thinks he's covered his sin now, does he not? And we'll see next week what he does after the fact. But he thinks, whew, dodge that bullet, huh? Whew, No one will ever know what I did. Joab, but I'm still the king, you know. Joab's the only guy. I'm home free. We'll see. I want to leave you with a verse. It's kind of a thought, okay? I like something a little more inspired, but this is scripture. I didn't write it. It's not always a happy ending. You know, we like to have those. We watch a movie. I want to see a happy ending. I don't pay. I don't know how much it costs because it's been closed for about $6 or $7 for a movie. Anyway, Paul tells Timothy, 1 Timothy chapter 5. It's a good verse for us. This is not just for the wicked, but this is for those who would maintain. These are for the Uriahs in the room who will maintain their integrity. This is also for the Davids in the room who think they got away with something. Okay. Paul tells us in 1 Timothy chapter 5, the sins of some people are obvious, reaching the place of judgment way ahead of them. The sins of others trail behind them. No one knows what you've done in the dark. No one knows what you've done in secret. God does, but you think you've covered it, David? In the same way, good deeds are obvious, and even those that are not obvious cannot remain hidden forever. God's going to expose the good deeds before you. Just like the goats and the sheep. When did we ever visit you? When did we ever give you clothing? When did we ever feed you? Oh, as often as you did it to the least. Unnoticed, but they go before you. I said I kind of end with a thought, but I want to just remind us all. There used to be an evangelist who would always come in and say, if you have sin in your life, you give you the ABCs of salvation. You might as well admit that you're a sinner. You might as well admit the problems that you're having in your life. You can't hide it from God. Why do you think? Why hide it? You might as well expose it and tell God openly, confess your sin. Acknowledge that you're a sin and the sin what it is. And then you have to believe the ABCs. Then you got to believe that Jesus Christ is here enough to forgive that sins and remove the guilt. Absolutely. I fall on A and B on a regular basis. Paul says, you know what? I'm the chief of all sinners. So you're not lesser because you admit that you're a sinner and confess. Then you're just saved by grace. And commit your life to Jesus. Commit it to light and peace and hope and glory. Amen? Amen.